right, well, Jason, good to be here with you on the podcast, my friend.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, man, I'm very honored and grateful to be selected to be on the podcast. I'm a huge fan of yours, and your podcast is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Well, I appreciate that. So one of my favorite stories about you, Jason, is you might remember this or not. We were in Lake Powell a couple of years ago. This just sums you up so well. Everyone's like, where did Jason go? And all of a sudden we look, and you had started rock climbing up the face of one of the walls at Lake Powell. And you kind of got stuck a little bit because it was easy to get up, but it was not easy to get up, but it was right. But there was no way down. Nobody else, and we literally thought we were going to have to life flight you off the wall of the canyon there.
Yeah, that was super embarrassing, man. So first off, that was the best Lake Powell trip I've ever been on. You hosted it, had a blast. I actually met my wife on that trip, so phenomenal.
Yes, you did.
And my friend Chris Ensign, he was like, let's go climb these rocks. And so we started climbing. We got a little aggressive, and as we were coming down, Chris started getting worried about being injured climbing down. And so he kind of convinced me that I should probably wait until he came back with some rope. Little did I know that Chris went back and told everybody on the boat that, hey, Jason's stuck, he can't get down. I was just thinking Chris was going to grab some rope and we were going to jerry-rig something together and get down. And the next thing I know, everybody's out there scared for my life, thinking they're going to life flight me off the rock. And I was super embarrassed, and and it is what it is.
No, it was great. We were all saying, it's like the one guy that we're not worried about was you. And the reason for that, and I just kind of want to brag on you for a second here, because if I had to go anywhere in the world and needed one person to go as my security, you would be my guy that I call, just so you know that. So you not only studied Krav Maga and all these other fighting things, but you were a Green Beret, and you commanded over 300 missions as the commander of a Special Forces team in the military. Is that all accurate and correct?
That is correct. Oh, I appreciate the compliment, by the way. That means a lot to me.
Oh, dude. I mean, 300 different missions. Where all did you go, by the way? Have you been, where were those missions mostly at?
So, they were all in Iraq. So I served 3 tours in Iraq, and it totaled over 3 years. And so it just kind of was luck of the draw. You know, I first went over to Iraq in 2003 with the initial invasion. That was essentially where I served most of the time was in Mosul, which is in northern Iraq. And I was with the 101st Airborne Division, 3187 Rakkasans, and the infantry there. My second deployment was as a U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret Detachment Commander, and that was in 2007 to 2008, and I was in the Diyala province, which is in central Iraq, and my last deployment was 2008 to 2009, also in Iraq with 10th Special Forces Group, and I was down south near Nasiriyah. And so those were my 3 deployments.
Wow. So tell us, help us, we're going to jump right into this. Give us an idea what it's like to be the commander of a Special Forces unit in kind of the battle zones that you were dealing with.
Well, I'll tell you, man, on my second deployment, which was the first time I was a detachment commander for a Special Forces unit, and this is, you know, a highly trained, highly elite unit. I had trained for almost 3 years to earn my Green Beret, and I had to convince my commander to let my team go to Iraq because I was so new, I was so young, and they didn't know me, they didn't trust me yet. And I convinced my boss. And he told me, you know, Jason, we don't have anywhere for you or your team to go, so find somewhere to go. And so we just looked at maps and we found an area where we hadn't had a, you know, United States force or coalition force presence in over 3 years. And so we said, we'll go check this place out. It could be good, it could be bad, we don't know. So we get to Iraq, and on the second day we were there, we go conduct a pre-deployment site survey. So we go to look for a location where we could set up a base and live. Because one of the missions of the Special Forces is to conduct unconventional warfare. And so what that means is we're going to go embed or work with and live with indigenous soldiers, so the Iraqi army soldiers. So we left in a 3 Humvee convoy. I was in the lead vehicle, as I always was. And right when we got outside the gate, my commander called me on the radio and he said, Jason, I'm flying into your location. I need you to come back. I said, okay, roger, sir. So I turned around the Humvees and I left and I went back to base and I got out of my Humvee and I got my one of my soldiers, Zach, and I said, Zach, you have to take my place. Jump in the front seat of the Humvee and go look for a place to live. And this is where we're going to go, and call me if you got any issues. He said, roger that. And they left. I remember walking back into the compound. I took off my kit, I took off my helmet, took off my weapon, I laid it on my cot. And I heard some commotion in the ops center, the operations center, and that's kind of where all the radios are at. And I went in there. I said, hey, what's going on? And one of the guys in the room said, troops in contact. And so when there's troops in contact, means that your forces are being engaged by the enemy. And the enemy at the time in Iraq was Al-Qaeda, which later transitioned to now ISIS and so forth. But Al-Qaeda, they were the bad guys. And I said, well, who's in contact? And the guy said, dude, your guys, man, you guys are in contact. And I was like, what are you talking about? The guy said, your 3 Humvees, man, they just left, they're in contact. I said, they left like literally 10 minutes ago. And so we jumped in some other Humvees, we put our stuff on, our body armor, our helmets, our weapons, we rushed out there. And the Humvee that I was just in had hit an IED. And so what had happened was some Al-Qaeda operatives hid an improvised explosive device, so a homemade bomb, onto the road, and it detonated and completely destroyed my Humvee. And Zach, who had just replaced me in the Humvee, he put both of his arms out to brace himself, and both of his arms were completely broken, completely folded back. And he was in bad shape. And Scott, who was the gunner, so he was standing on top of the Humvee on the outside exposed. He was ejected from the Humvee literally 100 feet down the road, and he had landed on his rifle, on the buttstock of his rifle. He snapped the rifle in two. He broke his back. He had a concussion. He couldn't remember what was going on for weeks after. He was trying to put his M4, his rifle, back together to fight, and obviously you can't do that. And we got out there. You know, we took care of our guys. The driver of the Humvee was on a team that we were replacing, and he lost his leg. He was literally leaving the next day. And the interpreter, an Iraqi, was in the back, and he died. And so that was day 2 of this deployment. And we got back to base, and I called up my commander, and I gave him a report, sit rep, what was going on. And at the end of my conversation with him, I said, hey, sir, when are you coming into this base? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you called me earlier, you said you were flying into my location, you want me to turn the Humvees around and come back. And he was like, Jason, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, well, sir, you told me that, that's why I turned the vehicles around. He's like, that wasn't me, man. And so that was the first real spiritual moment I had in combat. Like, somebody was looking out for me. And luckily, the 2 guys on my team survived, and they're okay now, and they're continuing to serve. But that was kind of like what it was like going into Iraq for the first time.
Wow, that's an incredible story. So with these ops and the missions, when you're going and you don't always know what's going to happen, how often did you run into enemy fire in your units? Being Special Forces, you guys had more risky missions, I guess you could say. How often are you engaged with the enemy, essentially, out there?
So it depends on where you're at. Our unit was completely autonomous, so we could do really whatever we wanted to do whenever we wanted to do it. The base that we moved into with the Iraqis, we were getting mortared every single night. So there was kind of like a river, and across the river there was an elevated hill, and there was a village over there. And the enemy, Al-Qaeda, would place mortars and fire, kind of lob little bombs over across the river at our base. And so we had a few Iraqis die from that. Luckily, none of our guys got injured. But you know, when you're trying to live, you're trying to train, trying to sleep, and all of a sudden, you know, you're getting mortared almost every single day. It messes with your mind, man. It makes you super high alert, you know, and really pisses you off. And at the same time, you know, IEDs, improvised explosive devices, when you go outside the wire and you're in your vehicles and you're driving on the road, I mean, you have to be super vigilant, because at any time your vehicle could hit an IED and that would be the end of your life. And that's a tough way to deal with war, because you want to look somebody in the eye and fight and punch them in the face and shoot them in the head, man. But IEDs, you know, you never know when they're going to hit, and it's just a terrible way to go.
Yeah. So was that hard to transition in between deployments when you would come back to live your normal life and then knowing you were going back out again? Or how did that transition take place for you?
Yeah, it definitely was, especially as a commander. Because when I was in Iraq, man, it was as though I was a god. I mean, everybody did what I said. You know, my team, along with especially the indigenous forces, the Iraqis and the Kurds. And I had such power at my command. I mean, we had the Air Force, we had these unbelievable weapons, we had thousands of people under my command. I remember one time we had 4,000 Kurds and completely under my command, and we went and conducted a mission to completely eradicate Al-Qaeda out of a village called Karatapa. And I remember standing on my Humvee looking out into the field thinking to myself, dude, this is like being Julius Caesar, man. This is unbelievable. So when I got back to the States, you know, little things that I would take as disrespect really pissed me off. Like things that you would take for granted, like stoplights. You know, I would think to myself, why do I have to sit at this red light? Don't they know who I am? You know what I mean? Like those things that you don't really think about before you leave to go to combat. When you get back, it's really interesting. You know, when you're driving down the road, you're still super vigilant. You're looking for IEDs, although you know that there's nothing to worry about back in the States.
Well, I know when I was showing you and your wife homes one time, I don't know if you remember this or not, we went to look at a house up in the Brighton area, and it was kind of a weird setup. You had to go behind some other houses to get there, and there was like, it was kind of a wooded area, but it looked abandoned, but it wasn't. And I remember, I mean, you had been there for probably like 2 minutes, and you had already knew like all the people that were like what was going on in every section. You had said, hey, look out, there's a dog over here. You had found a letter that had the guy's mail, and so it was like on the ground or something, and so you knew the dude's name already. It was crazy, but I was just watching you, and it was like the amount of intelligence and recon that you were doing subconsciously, probably, right? You were just so used to doing that, really blew me away. And it was you could tell that your wife was appreciative, because she probably always feels so protective, you know, by you and around you, something that every, you know, woman wants. And that's the day I realized, like, man, there's things going on that I wouldn't even think twice about, and you were all over it. And I think, is that something that you just naturally do now since being in war, and that you're always doing? Because do you remember that when we were looking at that house?
I kind of remember that. I also kind of remember maybe breaking into one of those houses as well.
I'm like, you can't do that.
So I'll leave that there, but I do kind of remember that. But it's not something I think about. I didn't grow up like this, man. You know, I wasn't like this until I you know, went into the military, and I went to West Point, and there were some things there that I learned. And then especially when I went through the qualification course for Special Forces, you know, they teach you so many phenomenal things, and you really buy into what they're saying, because the instructors are the kind of people that you want to emulate as a person.
Dig into that a little bit. What is the qualification for being a Green Beret? What was that qualification process like?
So,
take us there.
So I got back from my first deployment in Iraq, and one of my best friends, Jesse Waters, calls me up. He's like, hey man, let's try out for Special Forces. I'm like, hell no, man. Like, that's crazy. Like, those guys are crazy. I'm not going to do that. He's like, dude, it'll be great, man. Let's do it, me and you together. It'll be like old times, man. We're running and gunning. And he convinced me to do it. So you have to fill out like all this paperwork and submit it. And after 6 months, they'll let you know whether or not you made the first cut. And so happened that I made the first cut, and my buddy Jesse did not. So I'm like, dude, I'm in it now. I'm stuck, man. I got to do this. And so we showed up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the selection is the first phase you go through, and it's about a month. And it's really cool because in the military, usually it's very regimented, and people tell you where to go and what to do, and they yell at you and the whole thing. But in Special Forces selection, they didn't yell at you, they didn't interact with you, they didn't tell you anything. They just put a whiteboard in the middle of the space between the barracks, and it just said, this is the time, this is the uniform, and this is where you need to be. And so you don't even know when somebody's going to write something on there. So you have to send somebody on your team out there every 5 minutes to make sure, you know, you're not late. And so you're just kind of chilling. And all of a sudden you show up and you don't know if you're running, you know, like, for example, they say show up in PT clothes. So like shirt, pants, you know, shoes. You show up and you're like, hey, am I running 2 miles? Am I running 8 miles? Am I running 12 miles? I have no idea. And the instructor shows up, and he has a stopwatch. He says, do your best. We'll be watching everything you do or don't do. Ready, go. And you just run. And
you have no idea how far you're going to go.
No idea. And so it messes with some people's mind, but I loved that because it gave you so much power and responsibility to succeed or fail on your own accord. And so through that process, they do a lot of mental exams, physical exams. Certainly they do a land nav course, which lasts about 18 hours. So you have to find 3 points in the course of 18 hours using just a map and a compass, and you're, you know, carrying a 100-pound rucksack and the whole thing. And they do some team events, very physically grueling. And then from there, you have 6 phases. So phases 2 through 6, they take about 2.5 years to complete. Phase 2 is kind of small unit tactics, so you go out in the field and you conduct ambushes and raids. And phase 3 is an academic course that lasts, you know, about a year or so. Phase 4 is what they call Robin Sage, so it's a role-playing event that lasts about 2 months, and that's in North Carolina. They actually hire economically distressed towns, the people in those towns, to serve as role players in this scenario where you're inserted into a foreign country and you have to inspire the people to rise up against a dictator. It's pretty cool. Phase 5 is language school, and I served my mission in Russia, so that was pretty easy for me, trying to qualify and graduate with a good score in Russian. And then phase 6 is SEER school, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, which is like a POW camp.
What did they do in the POW camp or in the SEER school? What did they put you through in that?
That was fascinating, man. So they bring you out to the woods and they teach you how to catch animals, and they teach you how to do all sorts of different survival techniques. And one of the things that you had to do was kill and eat a rabbit, kill and eat a chicken. You had to bring a cup of coffee to a boil with 1 match, and if you couldn't do it with 1 match, then basically you're out. And so it's very stressful. You know, make sure that stupid match lights and you have all the kindling and the whole thing. And then they train you how to act as a POW, how to be interrogated, how to resist, how to survive. And then you go out on a mission with your team that ultimately will go bad at some point, and you get captured, and they bring you to a camp. Camp number 3 was the camp that I was at, and they don't really feed you, or, you know, you can't eat, you can't drink, and they just put you through a few interrogations to test you, and then they do some things like they lock you in a box, and, you know, they get you naked, they throw water on you 24/7, they, you know. Did
you ever almost crack when you were going through it all?
You know, I didn't. I actually liked it. I was kind of weird, man. Like, I was like, this is really interesting, this is really cool, but it was interesting to see some of your friends that you really respected, that you know, thought really highly of, and to see them crack. That was mind-blowing for me, because it was like, dude, this is just an exercise. And some of the guys couldn't distinguish between reality and you know, fiction, and that was super interesting.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Did you ever have any of your guys, when you were actually on a mission, that got taken hostage or anything like that?
No, we never. We won every battle we were in. The guys were with on my team on the 2nd deployment, so we lost 2 guys, Scott and Zach, on day 2, and they really never came back, although they're okay now. And when you deploy as an operational detachment alpha, you only have 12 to 14 guys to begin with. So right off the bat, we lost 2 guys, and then in the course of that deployment, my team sergeant was shot through the legs, and my 18 Charlie, or my engineer, Sergeant Rob, he was shot in the head, and he died. So so that's kind of what happened with our team. Of the 14 guys we deployed with, 4 were seriously injured, 1 died, and obviously 4 got Purple Hearts.
Wow. Was that the hardest part about being in the military when you had when you lost one of your guys?
Yeah, man, that was the hardest. Yeah, that was the hardest experience, the most difficult experience of my life, man. As a commander, they teach you, you internalize the message that everything that your team does or fails to do is your responsibility. You know, and then you memorize certain creeds, and they just aren't words, man. You really believe in them, like the Ranger Creed, you know, like the last paragraph is, readily will I display the intestinal fortitude required to fight on to the Ranger objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. And so those are things that you live by. And when we went on this mission to capture this Al-Qaeda battalion commander, this guy named Abu Haji, we found out he was actually at the location, and he got on the rooftop, and he shot Rob, and immediately when I got to Rob, I realized, you know, it didn't dawn on me, you know, I knew right away, I was like, this is on me, man, this is my fault, I'm the commander, Rob's death is on me. And so, you know, I didn't know he was dead at the time, but we got to him, I took his helmet off, and there's blood everywhere. I got gauze, and I put gauze on his head, and I was trying to talk to him, tell him everything was going to be all right. He was from Franklin, Massachusetts, so it's right outside the Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play. So he was a huge Patriots fan, and I was, you know, telling him, hey, dude, you know, Patriots are undefeated, man. You guys, you're gonna do well. Like, come on, man, stay with me. And he wasn't responsive, but he was shaking. You know, and that's kind of what happens when you get hit in the head. You go into convulsions. Mm. And so we took him out back to a safe location and tried to treat him, and conducted the operation. Went back into that compound with my warrant, just my warrant and I, and we ultimately captured that day 16 guys and killed 9 guys. So it was a very powerful experience for me, very successful operation as far as thwarting Al-Qaeda, but also a complete failure in that you know, we got 2 guys injured and one of them died. And so, you know, going back to the base with that on my soul, on my conscience, and then having to call Rob's parents, they were divorced, and so I had to make 2 separate phone calls and tell them that their son had died and how, and the response on the other line, you know, was the most authentic, raw, real human emotion I've ever heard in my life. Just the sadness from his father and from his mother, and that certainly was the hardest experience of my life.
Wow. I think that's something that, until you've probably been in that situation, you can't even imagine what that would be like. As the commander, you kind of know, because I mean, you're in war zones, you know that those things can happen. So how do you continue to, because it sounds like you carried a lot of this weight on you, you know, when you're in war zone and it's like people dying every day, but how did you balance that weight that you obviously carry and honored and felt, but at the same time had to go through with the mission and accomplishing at the same time?
I had to be strong for my team, man. I couldn't show weakness. And the thing about war is, it's awful. There's no doubt about it. And I wish it didn't exist, but it is. But at the same time, there's a certain beauty about war. You know, and war teaches you lessons that you will never forget. And it really shows your true character. And there's something just so visceral and ancient and powerful about that experience. You know, it really hardens you as a person. Thinking back on how I acted and how I was, you know, back in the States before I went through these experiences, you know, happy-go-lucky, very bold, try anything, laughing a lot, you know, that sort of thing, just kind of living life, trying to get as many stories as possible, putting myself in situations where I could get as many stories as possible. But then, you know, experiencing what I did and what my team did in combat, you have a different mindset. You know, you aren't as tolerant, you aren't as merciful. and you see how evil and dark and miserable the world really is at times, and how unjust it is. And you just have to, I guess what I did was accept that, move on, and do the best you can moving forward to honor your guys.
So, kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but you recently became a father. How did your experience being in the military, because there's a lot of, I've heard you tell a lot, a lot of great things about the military and everything that you served and everything. You have a lot of great memories, and you've done a lot of good, which we're going to get into here in a second, with your experience being part of the military. But how has it helped you as a father now that you have your little baby, and change your views that way?
Well, I appreciate bringing that up, man. I'll tell you, I'm 41 years old, and I was a father for the first time at 40 years old, and that was the most powerful, most beautiful moment of my life when my daughter was born. It was so cool, and I never thought it could be that amazing. And I think I learned fear for the first time being a father, because I remember when I was a kid, and I would do just crazy things, and my mom would be like, "Wait till you're a father, you understand what I'm talking about, because you terrify me," And obviously I'm not fearless, but probably being stupid, like I didn't have a whole lot of fear. And now seeing my daughter, like all I do is think about, I have to protect her, all these things that could happen to her. It's terrifying. And so having her around now, I feel fearful. I want to be there for her. I want to protect her. I want to make sure that she has a safe and happy life. And she's great, man. My wife is phenomenal. My daughter is hilarious. She has the best sense of humor. And hopefully she's an athlete, man. She's got.
Well, I love that your wife was a All-American at BYU, right?
That's what I'm getting at. Lizzie's got the Lizzie's got the good genes, man. She was a national champion at BYU. She was the North American record holder for the steeplechase for many years, and then she competed in the Worlds. At the time when she competed, steeplechase for women it wasn't a Olympic event, but now it is. So had the steeplechase been an event and the Olympics at the time, she would have gone to the Olympics, which is cool. But it is what it is. She no longer runs. We jog on Jordan River Trail from time to time, but that's as far as we go.
No, I love it, man. Well, it's been fun because a lot of people, I think there's a lot of stress upon, one of the main stresses that people have in life is finding that life partner, right? That love of their life. And it took you, much later in life, similar to myself, where I'm 36 now, still single. You were 40 when you finally got married. Do you think that there were some advantages that you had being so much older? And how has it helped you as a spouse having that experience 40 years under you by the time you got married?
To each his own. And for me, if I had gotten married when I was 20 or really young, it would not have worked out. I don't think it ever would have worked out because I wasn't experienced enough. I was too immature. I wanted to do too many things with my life. I had too much testosterone. And so if I got married young, I think I would have thought to myself, man, I'm missing out on life. I'm missing out on going to all these parties with my friends. I've always wanted to start a business. Now I won't be able to do that. But having done really everything I've wanted to do before I got married, that's helped me become a better husband and a better father, because now I don't really have selfish desires. So it's a dumb story, man, but I'll tell it anyway because I've already started the story, man. So I was sitting on the couch and I was thinking to myself, man, I would really like a sandwich. And I was thinking to myself, should I dare ask Lizzie to make me a sandwich? And I said, you know what, I'm not that confident, I won't do it. But here's what I will do. I'll go make a sandwich and I'll give it to her. And I did that. She's like, oh, thank you. And I said, yeah, no problem. And she kind of recognized that. And in her own mind, she was like, well, Jason really did a nice thing for me. I want to do something nice for him too. And so moving forward in our marriage, like she would just out of the blue do nice things for me. because I go out of my way to do nice things for her without asking. And I think that's been a huge, huge part of our happiness in our marriage is, you know, being selfless and doing things for her benefit rather than for my own selfish needs, that is.
Well, I think you probably learn a lot of that in the military too, because you're always serving others. You're always putting your life and your needs almost on the back burner at a lot of times. So I think there's a lot to that. And speaking on that, you have a nonprofit that you've set up that is all designed towards vets and people that are ex-military trying to start businesses, called Warrior Rising. But you also have a for-profit business called Mission 60. And I was lucky enough to have a chance. I want to kind of dive into this because this is amazing. Basically, tell us a little bit about Mission 60 and how it ties to Warrior Rising, what you guys do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I was getting ready to get out of the military. I got medically retired in 2015, but I deployed to Mali, Africa, and we were training some echelon tactique inter-armée forces there to fight off Tuareg rebels, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, working with natives, Africans that were wearing loincloths and throwing spears. I mean, it was legitimate, it was crazy. And I got real sick. And turned out I came down with some sort of seizure disorder. And as a result of that, I could no longer really do the things I was doing in the military. My commander, you know, they wouldn't let me jump out of airplanes or shoot rifles or drive my car even. So it was a tough few years for me trying to work through this issue, going to a lot of neurologists. And I started thinking about what I would do if I left the military. And it turns out, you know, I got into the BYU MBA program, so I went to BYU. A single Mormon guy, obviously made a lot of sense, had a blast there. BYU was awesome. And I noticed that everybody in Utah County, like, they were entrepreneurs and they were making a ton of money. And where I'm from in Virginia, you know, nobody's an entrepreneur. Nobody. Everybody works for the government. You know, you don't hear about anybody starting their own business. It's just, you know, you're a contractor or you start some sort of contracting company maybe is kind of the limit of what's going on where I'm from. And so I started thinking to myself, well, if I were to start a business, what would I do? And I said I would start a business with the knowledge that I have and the passion that I have, and I was knowledgeable about the military and special forces and leadership and team building and that sort of thing. And I collect people, you know, and I think that's where the power comes from in my business, is the quality of people that we have on the team. And so I went to my network and I looked at all the commanders I had that I really respected and looked up to, and all the guys that worked for me that I respected and looked up to, and I said, you know, you guys are the best leaders I've ever met in my life. If I ever had a son or a daughter, and I would want you guys to, you know, all be in one room, and my son or daughter could soak up everything that you guys are. That would be my ideal way to train or to teach my son or daughter. And I convinced these guys to start a company with me. And I combined that knowledge with the passion for sports. Spent a lot of time watching sports, following sports. I'm from, you know, the D.C. area, so I'm a huge D.C. sports fan. And so we said, what if we could provide this Special Forces brand of leadership training to professional sports teams? And you know, being young and dumb and bold and very confident, I started cold calling NFL teams, and it went down the list, man. Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons, Buffalo Bills, Carolina Panthers, and we finally got to New York Jets. And I convinced them to give us a shot. And so we flew to New York and we presented to the New York Jets in 2012. And we
that was Rex Ryan, Tim Tebow, all that, right?
Yeah, it was Rex Ryan, and Mike Tannenbaum was the GM, and we presented to them. And after the event was over, after the presentation was over, Rex and Dave Zott said, you know, we brought some other similar type of companies in that have been doing this for a while, but you guys blew us away. We're going to hire you for the year. So that was really our first contract, which was awesome. And then from there, we've worked with the Raiders and you know, the Vikings for the last 3 years. We worked with the Bengals, the Panthers, and the Ravens. So it's been a good ride.
Well, it's cool. I got the chance to go out when I was living in Northern California for a couple months about 3-4 years ago. You did one with the Raiders.
That's right.
And me and a couple buddies got to go do that. It was so fun. So we basically dressed up like the bad guys, the Al-Qaeda or whatever, and you guys would help the football players take us all down or whatever. And I basically got shot by a pellet gun like 50 times. But it was really cool because you do the full interrogation, and I remember sitting there and I can't remember if it was Michael Strahan no, it wasn't Strahan, it was one of the Oakland players, and he was just, you guys were like pushing him, and he's 6'7", 310 pounds, and he was super like intimidated by you guys. So it was just really fun to be there that day. And a cool part of it, of what you guys do, is you have your Warriors Rising part of it as well, where you give back to other vets. I remember you had some wounded warriors there with you as well. What was the response from the NFL teams like? What did they say? And now that you've worked with 6 of them, you've also worked with a couple of major league teams. I know you worked with the Texas Longhorns football team.
Yeah, we worked with the Seattle Mariners and the Colorado Rockies as well. So it's so interesting going to every team because there's like a different culture, there's a different atmosphere at every single organization. And the Raiders at the time, when you talk about dysfunction, you know,
they were a mess.
They were a mess, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, they had their front office overtly working to fire their head coach, Dennis Allen, and Dennis Allen hired us. And so we did a lot of coaching with Dennis, and you know, kind of providing him information that he wasn't aware of, and then at the same time providing him information about his players, and you know, getting their players to buy in and everything. So that was a really interesting contract the Raiders won. But like you said, Warrior Rising kind of sprung from that event with the Raiders, because after the event was over, and as you know, we work with a lot of injured combat veterans. I bring them out to be instructors. You know, I was talking with the guys after the event was over about life and make sure everything was okay with them. And, you know, as a commander, it's just kind of what I do, is to make sure everybody's taken care of. And, you know, we were talking, and I was asking about what they were doing. And, you know, they said, well, Jason, you know, we get a large disability check from the government, and there's all sorts of charities that take us hunting and fishing. And I was like, awesome, man, it sounds great. And they're like, you know what, it's not that great. I'm like, well, why? And I said, well, Jay, it's a little awkward, man. We didn't ask for this stuff, number one. Number two, you know, I don't want to be a charity case. You know, I joined the military for a reason, man. I wanted to do more with my life. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to give back. I wanted to serve other people. And now everybody serves me, and it's just, it doesn't feel right, man. And I said, well, what do you want to do about it? And they said, you know what, man, I've been through a lot of stuff in combat, you know, and I've lost limbs, and, you know, life is really tough. And a lot of times I sit on my front porch and I just think about suicide. And I said, again, what do you want me to do about it? Because these guys are military guys. I talk to them. I treat them just like a brother, man. A lot of people don't know how to treat them, and that's a problem. And you got to hold them accountable, man. That's what they want. They don't want to be treated with kid gloves, you know. And they said, well, Jay, you know, we want a purpose. I said, okay, find your purpose. And they said, how did you find yours? I said, well, to be honest with you, man, like, after I left the military, I started this business, and I spent all my time trying to make it successful. You know, I spent a lot of time, like, trying to land contracts, you know, recruiting people, doing all the things that you have to do as a business owner. I don't have time to complain. I don't have time really to do anything else, and it's fun. You know, everything, just like in the military, whether or not your business succeeds or fails, it's completely on your shoulders. You know, you don't have anybody else to blame except for yourself. And a lot of them said, you know what, we want to have that experience as well. And I said, okay, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, we have some business ideas too. And I said, okay, well, what kind of ideas do you have? And they started telling me their ideas. And some of the ideas were just terrible. I mean, the worst. And I was like, guys, that idea sucks, and here's why. You know,
but
like,
that's probably what they needed too.
Well, that's what they needed. And they're like, oh, thanks, brother. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, I just saved that guy his life savings. He would have dumped it into this dumb idea. And some of the other ideas they had were really good. And the guys that I told had good ideas. They said, Jason, well, give me some money, man. Help me start this thing. And I was like, well, guys, I'm not going to give you any money. You're going to have to show me your business plan. You're going to have to show me your pro forma, your SWOT analysis. And they're just like, dude, what are you talking about? I was like, if you don't know what those things are, man, you're not gonna succeed. I don't care if you're a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL. You know the definition of hard work, but you know, you got to understand what business is all about before you can really hope to succeed. And so, so they said, well, teach me, man, help me out. And I said, I don't have time to do that, guys. And they said, well, seriously, Jay, like, help us out. And I thought about it for a few months, and I got together with some friends. One guy named Ryan Miller, and I think you know him, Jimmy. He's a West Point guy. Went to Harvard Business School. He's a Ranger. He lost his leg in combat. He was at the Raiders event, and another guy, Joe Hilton, who I met at the BYU MBA program, who's phenomenal, brilliant entrepreneur here in Utah. And we got together and created Warrior Rising. And it's a nonprofit that helps veterans start or accelerate their own businesses. And so we help guys help themselves. You know, we empower guys to have something to create, to give them a purpose again, to give them an opportunity to be busy, to not think about suicidal thoughts, you know, to potentially make money on their own so they can support themselves, and then hire other veterans through that process. And we started that 2.5 years ago. And to date, we've raised about $800,000. And we help 12 new veterans every 3 months. And we help them by giving them grant money. We help them by giving them mentoring and training. We help them by crowdfunding opportunities. So the guys that we've helped in the past have all immediately gone to GoFundMe or Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And we realized we could just bring that all in-house and have it all on our Warrior Rising website. And then we give them opportunities to get loans from people, and then also to receive investment dollars from people. So that's what we do.
No, it's amazing, man. I love it. And you had an opportunity, I know you auctioned off or sold some experiences. The Vikings gave you some Super Bowl experiences this year to help raise money for that. Is that right? Yeah,
that was really, it was fun, but it was extremely stressful to sell those tickets, man. I thought people would eat them up, but nobody wanted to go. We had 16 tickets from the Vikings, and they were one step away from the Super Bowl, man.
I know.
And so we trained them. We've been training them for 3 years, and you can see the process. You know, incrementally, they're improving every single season. And so they gave us 16 tickets. They set us up with lodging. They set us up for all these crazy exclusive VIP parties and the whole thing. And we sold the tickets for $10,000 a ticket and had folks come out.
Well, tell us the story about, you had one of the guys that won the ticket, because when you told me that story, that really warmed my heart. The dude that didn't believe you guys.
Oh yeah, so his name's David Lear. And so we did a Super Bowl raffle. So we gave away 2 of those 16 tickets online. It was kind of cool because Kyle Rudolph and Riley Reed for the Vikings, they did this video for us promoting this raffle, and we put it on this website called Threnacia, and people would sign up. And we found out that, you know, the Eagles won, so we went to a local Eagles radio station and we bought a bunch of ads, radio time and everything. And over the course of the week, 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, all the Eagles fans were donating $5, $10, $30, $100, and we were just raking it in. It was really, really cool to see. And we had a countdown to when we were going to officially announce who won the tickets. And I was like, dude, please be cool. Please be a cool guy or a girl or whatever. Just, I don't want
somebody that would appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with any more drama. You know, so on the website, you like click this button and it kind of shuffles and, you know, picks the one winner. So I have it on video. I'm like, okay, here we go. And I pushed the button and it shuffled through everything and it landed on a guy named David Lear. I'm like, okay, David Lear, you just won the ticket. So I got his number and called him up. I'm like, hello, is this David Lear? He's like, yeah, who is this? Like total Philly accent, you know. And I'm like, this is Jason Van Camp. I'm with Warrior Rising. And you just won 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. And he's like, who put you up to this?
Immediately.
I'm like, bro, you won the tickets to the Super Bowl. What's your name? It's Jason Van Camp. Okay, I'm looking you up right now. Okay, well, here's the website. You can look at my bio on the page, on the website. It's right there. And so finally I convinced him, you know, that you were going to the Super Bowl. And he was like, dude, this is unbelievable. He's going crazy. And I think I made the mistake because his wife was in the background. I was like, yeah, man, you and your wife are going to the Super Bowl. And his wife was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And he's like, well, hold on a second. Honey, you're not going. And she was like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, I told Jeff that if I won, I was taking him. And so he brought his buddy Jeff Michinok, and they were both die-hard Eagles fans, and they were the coolest guys ever. They were so grateful. They came out. They didn't complain. They had a great time, and you know the Eagles won the game, so they were in tears at the end of the game. They were saying, "This is the greatest moment of my life," and I was like, "Man, this is pretty cool."
Well, it's just cool. I think one thing that you're so exceptional at so many things, and creating a life experience like that is just something that to me just warmed my heart, because I love that, the idea of being able to give somebody an experience that they were never going to have otherwise, a total stranger, and that, you know, just to love that guy. And when you first told me this story too, you were laughing so hard because it was just, you were so happy about that, how happy this guy was. It was pretty funny, and we're both pretty avid sports fans. We can appreciate this, as you know. But well, I want to jump in real quick before we.
Cool, though. That was cool.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
That was fun. What was your best day you ever had in the military?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. Best day I've ever had in the military. So I enjoy the journey with your team. You know, so if ever I was alone, I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as I would through an experience where you can succeed and you can look to the guy to your left and to your right and see them smiling, you know, and see them happy, and then that really kind of made me feel that it was all worthwhile. So one particular moment kind of sticks out. Like I could go on about like when we graduated from SEER school and they raised the American flag and we did an about face and saluted the flag, and that was an emotional moment. Or the time that I was in formation and we earned our Green Berets and we donned our Green Berets for the first time. That's pretty impactful. Graduating from certain courses like Ranger School was pretty awesome, you know, graduating from Ranger School. But during phase 2 of the Special Forces Q course, the qualification course, we had just finished a mission, a practice mission, and it was just pouring raining, and we got in the back of this truck, and we had another like hour drive until we got back to the barracks, and everything was over. It was complete administration time, so you know we weren't on alert. We knew we weren't going to be attacked, you know, by anybody or anything like that. And I was in the back of the truck where the flap was, and I was just getting drenched. And all the guys in the truck, they were looking at me and they were just like laughing. And I was miserable, absolutely freezing cold, like it was January. I was miserable, it sucked, I was drenched. I was as wet as if I had jumped in a lake, you know. And the guys just started laughing at me, and then I just started laughing, and then they kind of started singing like some songs because they were happy, and we all just kind of started singing. And I'm not a singer, you know, obviously. I have no talent there, but that was probably the most memorable, probably happiest moment that I had in the military. As insignificant as an experience as that may sound, it was an impactful moment to me.
Well, I think looking back, most people when they look back on their lives, it's when you truly connect with other humans, right? The people close to you is when you have the most happiness. I recently wrote a blog post about the difference between happiness versus pleasure. And I think you have these pleasurable moments where you go do these amazing things, or you know, jumping out of an airplane or things like that. But those happiness moments have to do when we connect on that human level. And I think that was cool that was where your mind went to, because that to me wasn't an insignificant story. That was when you and your guys connected on that deeper level and felt that love for each other. So
that's well said. It was a connection on a deep level, and I totally agree with that. There's a small point there to be made with suffering you know, shared suffering, you know, everybody being miserable together
Yeah.
and finding humor in that. I mean, that's a very, very powerful bond. You know, embracing that suck together. That's hard to break.
No, I think that's amazing. And I've always been jealous of, even at your wedding, was out in San Diego when I was out there, I've always been jealous of the brotherhood that military people have, right? I think there's very few things in the world that can bring that bond. I think certain sports teams have an idea of that, brothers, legit brothers, and I think you're friends from like high school or maybe your college roommates. But there's very few moments in life where you get to create such a strong bond. Well, last question I want to just leave you with this is, young kid, 15, 16, 17 years old, thinking about going into the military, what advice would you give to somebody that's younger, or even maybe in their young 20s, but thinking about joining Special Forces or the military?
There's a lot of guys that I run into that want to do that. They want to be a Navy SEAL, they want to be a Green Beret or whatever, mostly Navy SEAL, because that's what, you know, that's what's out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Market Navy SEALs, I got it. You know, and that's no problem, whatever. You know, I love those guys, respect them. I've got some of those guys on my team.
Of course.
So you got to ask yourself, first and foremost, and you hear this a lot, is like, why are you doing this? You know, when you go through training, as they say in the song, you know, the Battle of the Green Beret is 100 men test and only 3 win the Green Beret. And why is that? You know, it comes down to being humble and listening and connecting with the people around you, because it's the same thing in training as it is in combat. You know, when things start to get tough and your true character starts to reveal itself, you're not thinking about, you know, really your family or the United States of America or the Declaration of Independence or anything like that. You're thinking about your team. You're thinking about the guys to your left and to your right. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm not going to fail this guy to my right, this guy to my left, because I know sure as hell that he's not going to fail me. And that's where that love and that brotherhood and that bond really comes in. And it's the same thing in training, man. Like when you're sucking, it's a really tough experience, you know, if you start thinking about yourself and how miserable you are and thinking selfish thoughts, you're not going to succeed. If you look to your left and to your right and you look at that guy and say, man, he's really suffering, let me see if I can help him, you know, that's where you kind of lose yourself and you find success.
I love that, man. It's beautiful. Well, dude, I appreciate you, man, as a friend, and I appreciate you sharing some stories with us. I know we got a little deep there at the beginning, but just kind of wanted to really show just how intense what you do is, and kind of show that pathway that led you to the amazing things you're doing today. So thank you again for being on, my friend.
I appreciate you so much, man. I appreciate you for having me on. Obviously we could tell stories all day long, man. I just wanted to give you something powerful and something that could really impact people's lives, and hopefully I did that. So thank you again, brother.
No, appreciate you, my man.
All right.
All right.